The Pokemon VGC community is in such a weird state right now. Not only do we collectively gaslight ourselves into believing a new game is coming just because we're so desperate to stop using Urshifu, we have also just all lost our minds over a trailer that effectively said, there will be Pokemon, and there will be stat customization.
Really?
To catch up those who came in late, Pokémon Champions appears to be a bit of a successor to the Stadium games, and from everything we've been seeing, this looks as though this will be the new home for Pokémon VGC going forward. Which I don't think will surprise anyone. The writing has been on the walls for a little bit. Case in point, it appears Mr. Freak really wants to design Legend ZA's combat around the most requested returning feature from Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which is not something they could do when VGC was part of the main experience, but now that there's Champions, they're perfectly allowed to do that, as neither will interfere with the other. However, whenever you do this, people are going to scrutinize the competitive scene a lot more. VGC's issues were splinters when they were part of a much larger experience, but will now become core problems of a game when you isolate the PvP like this. During the most recent 6 a.m. July Direct, amidst the 20 minutes of some pretty boring, middling, and the few neat at best announcements, Mr. Freak gave us a 2-minute preview at what Champions would look like, and it blew the VGC scene's mind entirely. Which is saying something, because the last time we got this hype, they banned Urshifu. The big thing Mr. Freak showed us in that trailer was that the training mode would effectively be the team builder ripped straight out of Showdown, which is exactly what everyone has wanted for the past 15 years. Another huge thing I would have bet money that Mr. Freak would never have the balls to do is that it seems IVs are just gone, which is probably for the best. Stat building is an important part of competitive Pokemon as a whole, whether you're trying to live a hit, outspeed, or even underspeed a threat. EVs are the points that build these stats, which leaves IVs to be the very rough, uneven foundation that they are built on, which is not great for a competitive scene. However, by removing IVs, you're going to be putting everyone on the same level. While there are some very niche instances where IVs are used to calc for specific speed tiers, especially in Trick Room, by and large you pretty much always want them either at max or at 0. You can more or less accomplish a lot of the same with EVs alone. Cali Ice is still going to be slowish with or without IVs, and the meta will still be the main determining factor whether or not underspeeding it is even possible. IVs are supposed to be the genetics of Pokemon. This was introduced to encourage players to breed for stronger Pokemon, which was completely sidestepped by hyper training, which was introduced to encourage players to stop cheating Pokemon in because breeding is a 6-hour Sisyphusian nightmare.
From our point of view, what we saw more and more is that piracy is a result of bad service.
And the same logic can be applied to the VGC. Hyper training is an intuitive solution to curb this cheating problem. If achieving perfect IVs is as simple as going to the top of a mountain to talk to a wizard that can make your dog the greatest athlete that ever was, there is less incentive to cheat. That said, hyper training is a bit of a band-aid fix in hindsight. The solution is not necessarily to add half measures like hyper training or a negative bottle cap. The solution is to make the stat system better by overhauling it so it's not indirectly controlled by some weird Byzantine rules that's explained in the same way Fazbear lore is. This isn't just a means to make it more accessible to new players. This is how you would logically revamp a PvP system that no longer has to coincide with a much larger RPG experience. The bones of this game are shaping up to be really solid, especially with the website clearing up people's biggest concerns about how it's going to be monetized. But all that said, there is one massive thing that could make or break this game for me, that being formats. The format of which VGC is playing is massively important, right? 2013 is looked back on as a pretty solid season, and 2016 is considered to be a format. And most people would agree that the single restricted formats probably shouldn't have left the idea board. For the past 7 years, Mr. Freak has been experimenting with rotating rule sets throughout a season. I personally prefer how it used to be, where a format lasted the entire season. This really allowed the meta to really grow, and was far less resource heavy on players. But with the direction it looks like Mr. Freak wants to take VGC, I find it a little hard to believe they'll go back to that. In a rotating rule set like this, you ideally want things to feel like they're naturally progressing. Something I would love to see is Mr. Freak kind of take some pages out of the TCG's book and make a rotation system similar to what they do, where they introduce a card, it fluctuates in viability through its 2 years of being legal, and when it's time for it to be rotated out, it doesn't feel nearly as bad, since in the meantime there have been new cards added to fill the void that card once had. This isn't perfect by any means, but a rotation system like this would add some consistency, which is something the VGC struggles with quite frequently. VG rule sets over the past 6 years have been very janky. They start and stop very suddenly. It does not feel like a very smooth transition, which doesn't feel great. And there's a number of reasons for this. Whether that be the format just never had enough time to really develop, they added new pieces that were far too strong, really, or a really nasty combination of the two things. And it's made even worse by how poorly Mr. Freak has communicated when these changes are happening, usually only giving players a month notice before the change happens, maybe even less than that. Not only is this hugely disrespectful of the player's time, this could also lead to some really cool meta developments never really happening because the format is effectively over before it even began. Not to mention, this is why it sometimes feels like the only thing these rules kind of do over the past 5 years have been iterations of banning and unbanning the Goon Squad over and over.
If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Okay, time's up. Now get out.
I think Mr. Freak does a fairly good job at balancing the game, for the most part. Pokemon is a game that can be very easily overbalanced. It is good to make some things weaker and some things stronger, but with how big of a roster Pokemon has, it's not realistic to expect every single creature to be viable. Some creatures are going to be destined for a life of greatness, with the rest being destined to a life of trying their best. I'm not going to talk too much about the balance changes I would love to see from Champions, as it falls pretty close in line to the greatest hit album from the VGC community. Freeze should become Frostbite. I would prefer more than 5 Megas be viable. Fluttermane and Incineroar need a hard crowbar to the kneecaps, and Urshifu just needs to not exist anymore. All in all, at its worst, I think Pokemon Champions is going to shape up to be a really good video game. In 2026, which leaves another year of Scarlet and Violet for us all to enjoy, capped at 30 frames as God intended. So I hope you are all as excited to replay Regulation H as I am, because I am just over the moon right now.
Greg, you've got to do something. This alien